Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make some hobby horses, and I feel like we don't see these much anymore and kids don't really play with them much anymore, but I have fond memories of them, and this is a very easy pattern to draw out. There's actually all kinds of patterns on Pinterest, but I just kind of looked at one of them and drew mine out, and then you can do it the size that you want. What I did, though, was I cut my fabric just slightly larger than my pattern so that I could allow for a seam allowance. But Tammy made a few of these also, or a couple of these, and she didn't leave a seam allowance, so hers were just slightly smaller, so you can do it any way you want. Now I'm doing this one with chenille fabric, and the reason that I'm doing that is because I want this one to be shabby chic. And now I'm taking some muslin, and you can actually use different things for this. And for some of the mains that I did, I put 2 to 3 layers of this, but this one I'm just doing 1 layer. And so if you fold it in half, it will be the length that you want your mane. And you want as close to that fold as you can get without going through it. If you accidentally go through it, this can be pieced back together, but just cut it almost to the seam, and then you're going to be sewing this into your pattern. And I apologize again for my voice. I think I've had a bout with the flu, and just seems like I can't seem to keep rid of the bugs this year. But here I'm just sewing this cutting this all the way to the seam, or almost all the way. And I'll do this on the length of this. And the length is just dependent on your pattern. And as you could see earlier, I just kind of measured the length from where I wanted my mane to start and where I wanted it to end. And now I'm going to pin this inside of the pattern. Now I'm doing right sides together because I am going to turn this one. And this could actually be done not turned. And I haven't tried that yet, but I really think that it would be a neat look. But this one I am turning. And again, I'm just sewing it or pinning it on the inside of the pattern. Now this is one of those projects. I know I've had a few people that or a couple people have mentioned that they don't sew, and what can they do? And with a lot of these projects, you can glue them with fabric glue. This is just not one that I would recommend doing that with. And the reason is because likely it will be played with. It may just be for decor, but it may be played with, so we want to make sure that it holds together. But this is a very simple pattern and a very easy sew. So even if you don't use a sewing machine, then hand sewing this wouldn't be that big of a deal because it would be kind of a quick project to sew. And I allowed extra here on my mane, so once I get it pinned where I think it should end, I'm just going to clip that off. And this is one of those projects that I thoroughly enjoy doing. Again, it's very simple, and I love that you can give these all different sorts of looks. This one is going to be shabby chic, of course. But then some of the others I'll use different fabrics on and change the look of them completely. So what I'll do is let you guys watch me make this one, and then on the other ones I'll just kind of show you as I'm making those and probably just play music during that time. Now at this point, this one has been sewn, and I left an opening on the bottom. And then I'm taking a finger sander and just really, really roughing up that mane, because the more you rough it up, the better it's going to look. Again, I folded a piece of muslin here that is twice the length of what I want the mane to be, plus a small seam allowance. But on some of these, we took some thicker twine and cut them twice the length that they needed to be for the mane. Again, plus enough for a seam allowance. And then we sewed a piece of fabric just down the middle, just a little strip of trim or something, and sewed it down the middle, and then that sewed those two sides together, and that gave something actually that would hold the twine together, and then we just kind of folded that and sewed that into the pattern. And I wish I had gotten that on film, but I didn't. But maybe at some point I'll get to show that on another video if these actually sell well. I've never had them in my store, so I'm not sure exactly how they're going to do yet. So now I'm stuffing the face of this and the nose with some polyfill. But then I want to add my stick. So my husband happened on some old sticks that maybe came from tools or something, and so he cut me several of these out of those, but you could use old broom handles or a wooden dowel, the thickness that you wanted. But then I put a styrofoam ball on the end of one, and that way if it is ridden and someone falls with it, it won't poke through. I don't think it would anyway, because this is a very thick rod, but just to be safe, I glued a styrofoam ball on the top. And then after I did the first one, I decided, this is one actually that I had painted, was going to make a snowman out of, but it's the only one I had handy. So I just kind of carved out a little area and put that little stick up in it, and then glued it. But on my other ones, my husband suggested that I use a tennis ball. So a tennis ball worked really well. I just cut a cross slit in it and stuck it up in there, and that's what I'm going to be using on the other ones. Now, when you put this inside, you're going to go all the way up to the top, and that way it has a lot of stability in it. But then you're going to make sure that when you stuff your polyfill in, that you completely cover that, so that you don't see any lumps and bumps that don't look natural. And I didn't mention that the sticks that I'm using here are 3 to 4 feet long, depending on what size child will be using them. Now, if you wanted to make one of these just for decor that was very rustic, just using an old stick from the yard would be a really neat idea. I think it would really look good. And obviously, if you found one that was sturdy enough and good enough, you could it could still be used, I guess. But I would think that at that point it would be more for looks. Now, this, unlike making a pillow, needs to be stuffed pretty firm. So I'm just stuffing it as firm as I can get it, and kind of trying to manipulate the shape as I go, and make sure that it's not thicker in some areas than others. And because I'm just kind of figuring this out as I go, I didn't really go on the patterns that I saw online, because I guess people were making them all different ways, and
So I just wanted to kind of do what worked for me. So what I'm doing is, and some people did this, I'm just gluing the fabric around the stick. And you're just going to have to gather it in places. And I'm not worried about that being that unsightly because I'm going to be trimming out around that anyway. Now on some of these, I stitched around the bottom with large stitches and then gathered them around. So both ways work, just whichever way you choose to do it. Either will work if you trim them out, but both methods need to have that bottom trimmed out anyway. And then I just took my scissors and kind of trimmed off any excess that I felt like would be in the way. And then I cut a strip from an old belt and glued that around the bottom to trim that out. Now little strips of leather would actually work well too. This one was actually a little bit stiffer than I would have had it be, but I still made it work. But the thinner that you can go on your leather, I think the better. Or this one could be trimmed out with just kind of a thicker ribbon would work really well since this one is shabby chic. And to make the ears on this, I just cut a couple of triangles the same size and not exactly triangles, just kind of the shape of an ear. And because I wanted the thickness, I sewed it all the way around the outside edge of it. No, I actually think with this one, I was just kind of playing and folded the edge, a seam around the edge, and sewed it. But then this is the only one that I did this way, and the rest of them I just took two ear shapes and sewed them together and then trimmed the seam around the edges, and that made the thicker ears, and it looked just as well, if not better, than these. And then I'm just gluing this on, and I'm adding the glue to the very tip of it and gluing it on. Now you want to use a good glue here because you want to make sure that it holds well. Fabric hot glue would be even better. And even better than that would be to hand stitch these on. Now with this one, I decided to take a needle and thread, and you want a strong thread for this. And then I made an indentation. So I took it from one side of where I want the eye through all the way through to the other side and made it indent for the eye. Right here I'm just kind of making a knot, but then I'm going all the way through, so you're going to need somewhat of a long needle here. And I just kind of indented the eyes. I just pulled it until it indented the way that I wanted it to. And I did the same thing with the mouth on this, and I'll show that process. But what I didn't actually do this on all of them, because the first one that I didn't do this on, I was just as happy with them. So this is a step that you could omit. I mean, it adds, I guess, a little bit, but not that much. So for most of these, I didn't do that. And then to make the bridle on this, I'm just going to use some strips of cotton fabric and just kind of tear them the width that I want my bridle to be. So the materials on this don't have to be much at all. You could use lace, I guess, if you wanted to. You could even use lace in with your strips of fabric in the mane. And I'm just gluing the bridle on. Again, I'm just using hot glue here. And just gluing it on. And this is just simple. I just kind of wrap around the nose here and then take a strip up to the mane on each side, just behind the ear. And I'm joining the fabric on the bottom here so that it won't show. And then again, once I get that glued together, then I'm just going to take a strip from the center of that just underneath the eye and behind the ear. And then once I got both sides done with that, then I took a button and glued it where the vertical strip meets the horizontal strip, if that makes sense. That just kind of finished off that little joint, and it will help it stay on better and just kind of dresses it up some as well. And I didn't mention that when I cut the strip for the bridle part that went under the eye, I took it to the mane and glued it there, and then I left a loop in the center so that that entire piece was long enough to go from the front part of the bridle up to the mane, and then have the loop for them to hold on to, and then glue back down the other side. And then as you can see, I added a little shabby bow on the bottom to dress that up. And then I added a hang tag that was just stamped with a horse head. And I didn't mention that for the eyes, I put some little vintage earrings, and I just kind of stuck those in with some hot glue. Now this one is made with a quilt top. It could be made with a thin quilt as well, but I just made this one with the quilt top. And then here I am using the tennis ball instead of the styrofoam ball. Now with this one, I glued the bridle on first, and I also sewed or glued the mane on afterwards. And for what I did with that one is I just glued the center of the mane down the seam along the back. So I'm just kind of showing different ways you can do it if you don't want to put the mane on the inside and have to sew that. But then also I'm using a separate piece for the bridle, and I just took, or for the little string that they hold on to, I just used a little strip of leather that you would get in the jewelry department for that, and just kind of glued it on. But there's so many possibilities for this. There's so many things that you can do to give them different looks. And I used buttons for the eyes on this one. And I didn't get to film where I added this mane, but again, I just took some strips like I did with the first one, and instead of sewing them inside, I sewed them down the center and then glued that on. Now this one I'm using drop cloth, and so I made the horse out of the drop cloth, and now I'm using this tea towel that I have coffee stain to make the mane. So I'm going to do it the same way, except that I've got a few here rather than just the one, and I'm cutting strips down almost to the center, and then I'll take this to the sewing machine. What I should have done, and I learned on some of the others, is sew these 3 pieces down the middle first, and then it would be a lot easier to attach inside. But I made this work fine. Again, just take however many strips that you decide you want, depends on how thick you want your mane, and then whatever strips that you use, you're going to fold them, and you want them to be twice the width that you want your mane to be in length, and leave a little seam allowance there in the center to sew inside your pattern. So now if I were to make this with the seam exposed, or the seams exposed, again, I haven't done that yet, but if I were going to do that with this one, then when I pin this mane in, I would pin it with it being on the outside, and then I would sew it so that those seams would be exposed and my mane would look right in doing it that way. But because I'm not going to do that, then I need to pin it with the mane inside of my pattern so that when I turn it, my mane will be on the outside.
I guess you've noticed most of the music that I'm playing today is cowboy music in lieu of these little hobby horses. And the reason I did this one with drop cloth is so that I could paint on it. So I'm going to make this kind of like a paint horse. And I'm just going to kind of dab some spots on it. I think I used the color Pine Cone, which is a Dixie Belle color, and the color Coffee Bean. And just kind of made some spots all over him. And you don't want these spots to be perfect at all. You just want to kind of make some little blotches here and there. I hope you guys will try these because they really are so fun to make. And if you don't have these sticks that we happened upon, then you can always use just old broom handles. Now, I would prefer not. You can get the plastic broom handles from the Dollar Tree. So if you wanted to do that and paint them to make them look more like they were actual wood, then that would work also. I just wanted actual wood for these. But you can always save your broom handles when you replace your broom.
Now, another great idea for these is to give them at a baby shower, and you could make them to match the colors that they're going to have in their nursery. Now, in hindsight, a better idea would be to attach this string here underneath the mane instead. But I hope you guys see that there's just so many ways to make these, so many possibilities, and I know that you'll have fun getting creative with them. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.